I'm going to hand the floor over now to MEP Faria, who's very kindly co-hosting this meeting with the European Alliance for Access to Safe Medicine. So, Faria, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mike. It's always a pleasure to collaborate with the European Alliance for Access to Safe Medicines. And we have many converging interests as they are very active on patient safety issues, and that is to be applauded. We should not underestimate the complexity of these safety features enshrined in the directive because many challenges are had to be overcome, and as it was experienced by stakeholders. One of these questions is that hospitals represent challenging environment for the implementation of the FMD. Hospitals face problems common to stakeholders who dispense medicines to the public. However, these problems are further complicated by the great number of units that are brought in every day and by the increased variety of companies that supply medicines to hospitals. Today, we have the opportunity to listen to experts involved in this process. I hope we can all learn from the implementation, how the implementation is going and how the challenges posed in the hospital environment are being dealt with. And the purpose of this meeting is to support the implementation of the FMD and to share best practices with a view to solutions being passed on to the hospital community. I will now pass the floor to Mike Isles, who will also moderate the session. Mike, the floor is yours.
You'll find a report in front of you, which I will refer to in a moment. Please take a look also at an invitation to complete a compounding survey, perhaps through your hospital, pharmacy networks or others. You might like to consider publicising that. I know that we all want this meeting to serve the best possible purpose, and the knowledge and expertise that is imparted here is shared as widely as possible. So if you like, this is just the start of something that we hope will be able to go potentially across hospital pharmacies in Europe. So now, there have been 17 breaches in the UK of the supply chain, of the legitimate supply chain, since around 2004. And we should bear that in mind, because if you think there are 27 other member states within the EU Union, you multiply that up, you get to a figure of 459 incidents. And I'm sure we don't track all of the incidents. We know of direct robberies of lorries carrying medicines and that the stock re-entered the legitimate supply chain. So undoubtedly, there will be great benefits from the implementation of the FMD. Yes, we understand that many hospitals receive direct deliveries from manufacturer, but that supply chain does not cover all. And so the extra supply protection afforded by the FMD is a very useful reinforcement. However, we must also bear in mind that many EU citizens buy medicines, often unwittingly, from the internet. A recent estimation put the figure at 130 million people potentially buying medicines, most likely without the need for a prescription. So we advocate very strongly that in addition to the common logo, that pharmacies also consider taking up the top-level domain name .pharmacy, which is governed well by the National Association of Boards of Pharmacy. Similarly, we would also encourage each and every member state and DG Santé to uphold Article 85D of the FMD, which legally obliges them to publicise the meaning of the common logo and to explain to the public the dangers of falsified medicine. This is important as those creating the demand, you and I in the room, consumers, patients, are supplying the criminals with their opportunity. So without further ado, I think there is no better place to start with the head of European Medicines Verification Organisation, the General Manager, Andreas Walter. Andreas, over to you.
The EMVS is now implemented and is mandatory. So we do not talk about, or I will not talk about safety features. I'm talking about the system which is checking the safety features all over Europe. And before I come into the details, let me say one statement. There are sometimes still discussions around why we need this system, and it is in the benefit of the patient safety. And each pack handed over to a patient, which is a falsified one, is one too much. So we should put all discussions in that frame. from now onwards. And that's the baby. You should all know it. This is, I think, the slide we are showing since 2011, when a design was fixed. In the middle, you have there the European hub, and the EMVO is running the European hub. The main purpose of this is that we have created there a sort of router which is maintaining, or which is establishing already, the interoperability between the national systems, because the central database was not kept as a solution in the very early discussions together with the stakeholders and the regulators. So the hub is the single point of data entry of a point of dispense verification system. So please, again, this is not a track and trace, it's a point of dispense, where the hub is the central data entry point. The hub is also keeping master data for a temporary time in order to make the communication between the repositories possible, to make also possible recalls, etc. And we are also taking care that throughout the system there is a European harmonization coming up and maintained, which is important if you go into standards for serialization, etc. We did a lot of work there before the deadline, and in order to make sure that all talk with the same language. This is our current status of the onboarding partners. Onboarding partners are manufacturers, not marketing authorization holders. I have to make the distinction. We have, our first estimation was 2,500 in Europe, manufacturers. Now, the regulation and the directive made, of course, that there's a certain decrease of numbers, because the serialization is related with costs, and very, very small manufacturers could not afford the serialization costs. So where we are landing now is about, in our estimations, 1,600. Out of them, we have 1,100 in our system. And if you go through, I do not give you all the details, but we have currently 335 companies uploading data in the system, which covers more or less between 90 and 95% of the products in the market. So we are there. However, I have to underline, we have still missing the small and medium-sized companies. And there we need support. If you talk about support, they have to be made aware that they have also to onboard still now, and in order to be on the market. If not, they are not compliant. So you see, overall, it's a Ferrari. We have now a cold start, and we will warming it up, but we will win the race together, all together with the stakeholders and the national competent authorities. Thank you.
What I'm going to do is just in 10 minutes introduce what we've done in Finland and what our state of readiness is. As I was preparing my slides, I've also discussed them with my hospital pharmacy colleagues who have given some insight into what the issues and the solutions in the Finnish hospitals are. So just to set the scene a bit, we're a small country with a small population. We have about 70 million prescription packs in the Finnish market annually. We only have 6 wholesalers, out of which 2 basically have 99% of the market. Just over 800 privately owned pharmacies. Hospital pharmacies, 23, and dispensaries, 56. And dispensaries would generally be health centres and privately owned health clinics, which have their own medicine supply as well. So when I talk about the hospital pharmacy setting in Finland, I mean both the hospital pharmacies and dispensaries together. We have had 3 falsifications in the legal supply chain in Finland. All of those 3 cases have been found in the hospital pharmacy setting. Luckily, they have now a group where we have one representative in our steering group, and that member is then very efficient in distributing out that information that we discuss in the FIMBO setting. So that helps us hugely. And also the hospital pharmacies have been very good and helpful in us reaching the dispensaries, which are maybe slightly outside of our communication channels. A few numbers of our state of readiness. We had our first verification performed in September, and our system has been up and running since then, and we've been gradually onboarding the end users and getting more and more data into the system. Currently, these are, I think, 2 or 3 days old, these statistics. So we then had 99% of the users connected. So we had all private pharmacies and just a couple of the hospital pharmacies missing at that point. However, we are getting more and more uploads every single day and every single night. So every morning we wake up and check the system, and there's a huge burst of new data in the system. So we're really happy about that as well. And about 83% of the transactions are successful at the moment. The rest cause an alert. Most of those are because of data not having been uploaded into the system. So we get missing master data and missing batch data alerts. But again, there we can see that we have that number looks better every single day because we have a lot of companies uploading their data. We also have a soft launch approach that we've discussed with our NCA. That means that currently the end users do not get the alerts in case where a pack data has not been updated into the system. And we have had no disruptions in the supply chain, and the end users have been very happy with this approach because they don't get the alerts from the missing pack data at the moment. So then some of the challenges the hospitals have faced. Volume, and volume. That is a big issue, of course, in a hospital setting compared to the private pharmacies. We have had some discussion about what the aggregation possibilities will be in the future. However, currently Finnish pharmacies do not want aggregation outside of the medicines verification medicines verification system because they see an issue there with data security. Quite a lot of the hospital pharmacies have had to have extra staffing, 2 to 3 persons per the bigger hospital pharmacies who do the decommissioning and verification procedures. At the moment, most Finnish hospital pharmacies decommission at the receipt of goods, and that is how most of the IT providers have built their systems as well. And now we have confirmation that the technical staff can perform those transactions. It just needs proper SOPs in place. Verifying and decommissioning is slow, and logistics need to be planned carefully. And here we had a request for the industry that it would be helpful if the 2D matrix would be in the bottom of the pack so that it could be done quicker if they're in a plastic box, for example. And many of the hospital pharmacies that said that they've had to plan their procedures differently now to have a standing buffer all the time so that if there's a delay in decommissioning or verifying, that won't disrupt the medicines flow in the pharmacy. A few solutions. A lot of hospital pharmacies are already using warehouse robots and utilizing automation and using PDAs, for example. There are a lot of new technologies for conveyor belts where the verification procedure can be done more quickly. We also have a system where we have a Finnish pharmaceutical database where pharma companies have made notifications that their packs have been serialized. And this information has been delivered to the hospital pharmacy databases. So when a hospital scans a pack, they know whether that pack really needs to be serialized already. So if it doesn't, if there is no need for it to have a serialization markings, they will put that aside, and that will save them a lot of resources, which they can then use in other places. There are also a lot of benefits of serialization. The most important one is, of course, patient safety and falsifications not reaching the patient. But we've had a lot of comments from our hospital pharmacies saying that this is really forcing them to streamline their procedures internally as well, to look into logistics, how things are being done and what could be done more efficiently. And also, the 2D matrix on the pack includes a lot of data that can be used in the hospital setting to further improve patient safety. You can track biological medicines, you can track narcotics more efficiently, it helps in stock management, and it helps to create better treatment processes where the medicinal flow in the hospital is more uninterrupted than before. So there are a lot of other benefits in addition to fighting the falsifications that the packs now have.
So today I'm going to speak on behalf of the European Association of Hospital Pharmacists, or for short EAHP, on the current status of FMD readiness in hospitals throughout Europe. And also I'm going to touch a little bit on the potential future perspective of FMD in the hospital setting. I would only like to stress out the volume issue. We are really talking about thousands of packs every day, which is several times higher than what we see in the community setting. And also we have kind of a leeway in terms of decommissioning, because the delegated regulation clearly states that hospital pharmacies are free to decommission the packets anytime they are in the physical possession of the pharmacy. If we take a look at all of our member countries, we see that progress is clearly there. Challenges have been faced, of course, but our member states are largely ready. If we take a look at the challenges we were facing, or we have been facing previously, of course, I've already talked about the scanning infrastructure, which was virtually non-universal. So we saw that in most of the hospitals there were a procurement needed for new scanners, even new computers, and also probably new connection to the internet. So this stabilization phase is also very useful for that fine-tuning of the software solutions as well. We also have to recalculate or revise our work processes so that we can include FMD in our everyday practice. And if we are using any sort of automation in our hospitals, then the reprogramming of those robots are also due. So it's not only software, hardware, and physical goods, but human resource as well that needs investment in. We are seeing not only difficulties with FMD, but we are seeing quite clear advantages and potential future outcomes for FMD as well. Because of the delegated regulation and FMD taking that extra step forward, we are seeing that a very homogeneous scanning equipment was installed throughout Europe, which kind of enables us to create new pieces for our puzzle of patient safety and medication supply chain prudence. And for that, we can use this information contained on the individual packs to kind of upgrade our stock management procedures for a higher level of financial prudence. They also, the unique identifiers, they also enable us to trace the medicines inside the hospitals from their receipt to the pharmacy to the point of dispense at the bedside or at the unit dose machinery. And if we take the third piece of puzzle, which could mean that using all these data that we are able to gather now, we can really assist hospitals doing patient-level costing, financial control over how healthcare is financed. which would also kind of upgrade how financial prudence is done currently in hospitals. And if we take all those three pieces of this puzzle together, we really see a very clear way forward to patient safety and how hospital pharmacists can influence and evolve medication safety for our patients.
In Spain, we have the same problems. We are really, this is our supply chain for hospitals. We mainly buy from manufacturers. 90% of hospitals buy 100% of their supplies from manufacturers. We have never had a fake medicine in the hospital setting. So it wasn't a priority for our authorities. So we have been working 2 years to make this happen and to make a return on investment. Mainly community pharmacies are on the system now. They are doing 100% verification, and only some private hospitals, big chain private hospitals, has connected to the system. Public hospitals, we are updating some of our technology, and actually we have been working in evaluating the technology. And as general hospital pharmacies, we think 100% of hospital pharmacies in Spain, we are going to do the verification at the reception of the drugs. Also, we are working in improving the electronic system data change with suppliers. So we think it's an opportunity, this FMD regulation, to implement the aggregation and standardization of aggregation. It's an issue that really drives us crazy. Everybody talks about aggregation, but we are worried that every company do a different aggregation while the European aggregation standard comes. What we think we want to see in the future is end-to-end. But when it comes to the pharmacy, for us, traceability is a main point, because we work with the drugs while they come to our hospitals to make them safe for the patients. So we really have been working many, many years. So we receive the prescription and the pharma checks this prescription. We do compounding, warehousing. We use automation, and IT systems support our medication safety a lot. We have some publications on that, and we try to dispense and administer with 0 errors, what is our really goal inside the hospital. We want to be sure when we connect, we use the ID of the drugs for other purposes that are also set in the regulation, such monitoring health outcomes, pharmacovigilance processes. We think this is a must for us. And also in this environment of transparent and that patients demand more from us, we want them to really know what drugs and where we give them the drugs, so they can help on their own patient safety issues. And we have to create a framework of collaboration. That's the only way we think we can provide real value to the health system and the patient safety. Thank you.
So I work across the NHS Wales Informatics Service. So we're very lucky in Wales to be, well, Finland's a small country, we are a very small country. We're able to have a centralised IT wing, essentially. So we take the lead on national projects such as the Falsified Medicines Directive. We see around 320 million euros worth of stock being purchased through the All Wales pharmacy system, and around the same being dispensed on a yearly basis. The MHRA, who are a national competent authority, have stated that should we leave with a no-deal Brexit at the end of March, we will not be able to fulfil the obligations under the Falsified Medicines Directive, therefore we will stop. It is the full intention of the United Kingdom government to provide a similar, if not identical, system should a no-deal Brexit occur. Automation is where I'm looking at there. In Wales, for example, we use the same robots as they do in England, essentially, and such a big part of our pharmacy workflow is dependent on the robots. which do cost a lot of money. And if we can leverage those to essentially fulfill a lot of the obligations with FMD, then that obviously takes a massive mental and physical burden away from the pharmacy technicians to essentially leverage what we've already got. But what we've done is we've been able to build into the hospital pharmacy system points for hospitals to undertake decommissioning at goods receipt, but also at the point of dispense to the patient, because obviously in accordance with the delegated regulation, the decommissioning process is supposed to take place as close to the point of supply to the patient as possible. And in the spirit of that, we've allowed hospitals to decommission right at the point of dispense, should they so wish. If we were to decommission everything at the back door on goods receipt, that would lead to a lot of problems for certain hospitals because they supply other legal entities. So if they decommission the stock, they would then have to physically segregate that stock from their wholesale operations. Whilst we might not be taking the absolute correct approach, we are taking a standardised approach that is defensible. In Wales, we're lucky enough, as I said, to be able to develop our own hospital pharmacy system. But what about sites and locations that don't use hospital pharmacy system? The Ambulance Trust in Wales is in scope. They don't have pharmacies. Some of the smaller health boards don't have physical pharmacies. They have roving pharmacy teams. So what we've had to do is create a brand new bespoke application for them, whereby supplying pharmacies, the bigger hospitals, can scan products on their behalf. And then the legal entity that will be decommissioning the product can decommission that product on receipt, after checking the anti-tamper device, of course. Wales are currently in the process of procuring a new all-Wales hospital pharmacy system, which will be a third-party system. So we will lose that flexibility to develop on the fly, which is unfortunate, but I'm sure the third-party providers have their solutions in place for us. Integration of automated dispensing solutions is key. Robots, cabinets, we need them. In order to make this a sustainable process, we need them to come on board, and we need to have conversations around some of the costings involved, because some of them have been really hard. It's been a hard pill to swallow for some of the capital boards in Wales. We've got many opportunities, as my colleagues have alluded to use the data collected for positive patient care. FMDs, that for me and for us in Wales, is the start of something much bigger. It's not a track and trace system, but we can use those barcodes with the GTINs and hopefully the DM&D codes one day, if I ever get my way, to really inspire some positive patient care.
I'm Patrick Mazot. I'm working in a wide university hospital in France. 5,000 packs a day in my hospital. It's not the majority of hospitals in France. It can vary between less than 100 packs and more than 1,000 packs in per day. There are more than 1,500 hospital pharmacies, and the number of packs is also underestimated. We know from France MVO now that there are 250 million packs in France, which are concerned per year. Today, only hundreds of pharmacies are connected, but less than 20 are already equipped and have begun the job. But most of hospitals have prepared a plan to implement the regulation. Most technical problems are those we have already noticed in other countries, in Spain and in Finland. One other data you should know that there are 115 different softwares in hospital pharmacies in France. 115. The lack of target funding by the French authorities has not helped. So we have major financial and technical obstacles of staff, software, interoperability, and no budget has been allocated by French authorities. So we try to find solutions by ourselves. We have to make a choice where and when we want to do the decommission scan, at the entry or at the delivery, or where we are putting in stock. The wide majority of hospitals now, we know, have chosen to do it at the reception, at the arrivals. It's a preferred scenario of about 75% of hospital pharmacies. The solution is to integrate the reception process, the data in the reception process, and of course, it should be supported by the informatics of the hospitals. So to overcome this lack, we have looked for a solution which allows to make easier the deployment of the FMD regulation and covers the whole need. Interfaces suppliers immediately operational without additional development and ensures of compatibility with all existing hospital software solutions. We cannot now think local but global because we are facing a revolution in our health system. The French public hospitals are commissioned to be included in wide territory units, which are the Groupements Hospitaliers de Territoire, GHT.
So how much time and stuff do we actually need? And for that, we simulated the process. For the lack of plenty enough packs that already were serialized, we did this twice, actually 2 years ago and last year. And this is just a simulation example. And you see, this is a discontinuous process. You can start, scan a few boxes, then you have to unpack the next bundle. Then you have to open up a box again. And sometimes there's a box and a box and a box. So it takes an awful lot of time. And we just summarized this. We found that eventually there was no difference between goods in and goods out with respect to additional time needed for conducting this process. This does not include any delays in data transmission, of course. So it's just single scanning procedure. And so we came up with a number of 2.1 seconds that it takes per pack to scan this. So if I just do the math, I come up with this, 3.8 million packs. Not all of them are prescription packs. So we end up with like 2.6 million packs. And if we multiply this with 2.1 seconds, we end up with a fairly high number of 1,500 hours per year, which results in 1 to 2 full-time equivalents that do nothing else but scan, scan, scan. Well, I'm a very techie kind of guy. I thought, well, do we need all this? This is very costly. Can we have something else like a Google-like solution or something like that? I can tell you there is a number of providers now out there that have cloud-based, web-based, or standalone solutions that can support us with that. And so we would like to have this. This is something easy to scan, and actually it's on the top. I much rather like it from the top because we tested camera systems that can do it from above. However, this box is actually a double layer box. You have to unpick it again. So I was really sort of unhappy about this solution. We did a pilot, which was organized by the German Association of Hospitals, and it worked beautifully, actually. We managed to scan just a single pack and then receive the remainder of the serial numbers. And then I was able to verify the 154 packs in 7 seconds time. And the decommissioning another 7 seconds time. So if you're still awake, then you remember 2.1 seconds time, 140 packs. That would result in 5 minutes total time. Now we're ending up at 14 seconds. That would ease the pain a little bit. So we're hoping that this is something that can be done in the near future, and we're just inviting pharmaceutical companies to offer this additional service, and there is quite a few companies that are willing to do so.
Let me start by reminding that the entire legislation has been launched due to a number of serious incidents of fake products that we had in the legal supply chain in the EU. And I think it's an important message also that I would like to tell to those who say, I have never had any incident in my hospital. This message is very dangerous because experience shows that we have had a number of serious incidents. I must admit that we have to be prudent because there is a serious public health concern with falsified medicine, and EU is not preventing from those serious incidents. We had also recently the Lunar Farm case where product was stolen and introduced in parallel traders in Germany. We receive also notification from the national competent authorities on a regular basis, highlighting fake product in the legal supply chain. So overall, I would like to say that falsified medicine can harm patients. It can affect also the confidence in the entire distribution chain of medicine in the EU. It's an illegal activity, so for sure it's very difficult to tell you from the Commission perspective the exact number of incidents that we had in the legal supply chain. We cannot track that. But I can already tell you that just in the Commission, we received 400 notifications of falsified incidents in the EU just between 2013 and 2017. And just last year, for example, with the Interpol operation, we had nearly 7 million euros of counterfeit medicine seized at borders. So overall, it explains why the European institution wanted to have a directive. But basically, the safety features is the last part of the puzzle, which will allow to complete our action at EU level to fight falsified medicine. Last October, we realized that the level of awareness was not sufficient, that we needed to outreach still a lot of actors. So we decided with the head of medicine agency and EMA to send a letter to the stakeholders. So we send an email to more than 2,000 marketing authorization holders to increase awareness. We ask also the member states to approach the wholesalers and the pharmacies to remind them their obligation, because I must say it has been a collective exercise. It's not something that can be done by one single person. During these last 3 years, we have also worked with the national competent authorities to draft a question and answer document to clarify the expectation of authorities. We have also had a discussion on aggregation, even though already at the time of the delegated regulation, we had the discussion on aggregation. And it was very clear from the beginning of this discussion that aggregation would have increased the cost of the entire system. And it's the reason why aggregation was not tackled in the delegated regulation. More recently, last year, we have set up a subgroup of member states to try to investigate if there is any possibility to facilitate the decommissioning by hospital. And so this subgroup issue a paper on a recommendation how we can have not a system of aggregation through the hub, but a system of data file that was explained and presented before by Germany, where we could facilitate the decommissioning by hospital, but under certain safety checks. So it's not that we have issued a paper offering a possibility of aggregation. We have put on the table certain options to have data files with a number of security checks that should complement the system of data file. Nevertheless, the aggregation through the hub, it was very clear from the stakeholders that it will not be possible to have that before 3 or 4 years. And there are reasons for that. We are launching an enormous system now, a big machinery. It's very premature to ask again the stakeholders to put more money on the table, to upgrade again the manufacturing lines, and to upgrade again the European database. Just in terms of status of implementation, I would like also to say that we are 10 days after the implementation date. I'm very pleased to say that the European hub functions properly. There are some technical problems that we are discussing with the NCA and the stakeholders to make sure that the problem is up and running successfully. We have tried to maintain the discussion as much as possible open with the member states to be able to react to any possible question like the alerts or having problems with the upload of data, and we will continue to do that.